Hey guys, welcome back to Digitalks with Tracy. I am your host, Tracy Joy Hamplick. Today's topic is about data. I will be discussing what data is, the different sources of data, the different types of data, the pros and cons of having data, and lastly, what are the different characteristics of data that we should be looking out for before making any strategic decisions. In this episode, I'm going to break it down into three parts. So this is part one, and I will start by defining what data is and explaining the history behind data, and then lastly, what are the sources of data. So yeah, the most obvious question, what is data? The word itself, data, is the plural of a Latin word, datum. Datum means a fact given or granted. I'll repeat that. Data is the plural of the word datum, a Latin word that means a fact given or granted. There is another definition of the word data, and this is from a more scientific standpoint. Data is defined as a set of values, facts, statistics that are collected, measured, reported, and analyzed for two reasons. Either you're planning something or you want to make a decision about something. So I'll repeat that. Data is a set of values, facts, and statistics that are collected, measured, reported, and analyzed for planning and decision-making purposes. Now, you all know there is no digital without data, so it's key that we can all explain what data is. And now you know what the word is and what it means from a scientific standpoint. Now, let's look at the history of data. It's a very brief history. There's a lot of information out there that you can find, but I chose what I found very interesting. Did you know that data actually goes as far back as 19,000 BC? That's before Christ, by the way. Scientists believe that this is the duration or the era where calculation devices were first invented. So the calculator we know today, they believe was designed or invented back in 19,000 BC. Now, there are different devices, obviously, but the most popular one is called the Ishango bone. Now, this Ishango bone is a dark brown bone that is from a baboon. And this bone has a sharp, like a crystal-like stone at the very end. And on the sides of the bones, there's different engravings. Now, scientists believe that these engravings are mathematical or can be used for mathematical reasons like tallying or doing multiplications, additions, and subtractions. So they believe that this Ishango bone is the earliest form of a calculation device. Now, it was founded by a Belgian explorer who was going through what they called Belgian Congo, what we know today as DRC. So yeah, the Ishango bone, there are some researchers that believe that maybe they were reading too much into it. Maybe these engravings don't mean anything. They were just put on the bone so that you can grip it. Maybe it was a tool for something else. So there are two sides to this story. But when you Google the history of data, the Ishango bone will definitely be among the top results. So yeah, that is data. That is the brief history of data. Let's look at the two sources of data. The first one is primary sources, and the second one is secondary sources. Now, primary sources of data, these are the direct or first-hand sources of information or data that is collected by an individual or an organization. So it's first-hand, it's direct. The individual or organization commissions a researcher or a research team to go out there and collect this information or this data, or they themselves do it. So it's first-hand or direct. Now, this type of data is collected for the very first time, which means it doesn't exist out there and no one else has this data or no one else has published it before. the beauty of primary sources of data is that you control what elements are being collected, and you also control the process of collecting this data. So you know, I want data about A, B, C, D, and to get it, I want to do so and so. So you control the whole data collection process, which makes it more reliable because you know you're getting it from the right sources. And also it makes it more costly because you control the entire process. You're the one who's paying for the tools or the resources, the time spent to collect this data. All this sits with you, so it tends to be a bit costly. And also another thing to note is that there's a consent issue that you need to keep in mind, because you're collecting information from people, and these people have to give you the permission to collect this information and publish it or use it for your own planning purposes. So this is primary sources of data. Let me give you guys examples. So you commission somebody to go out there and do interviews or to run a survey. Some people call it field work. That is a primary source of data. Or maybe you're a company that's selling products or services that require someone to sign up, and you give them an application form. That is a primary source of data. Even the internal communications that you have with your customers, maybe it's an email or an SMS or even a phone call that's being recorded, that is a primary source of data. And the most common one today is opinion polls or quizzes that you share on social media. All that information is primary source of data for you, the individual or the organization. Now let's look at the second source of data, and that is secondary sources of data. This is second-hand information that is already been collected by somebody else, but you want access to it for your planning purposes. So it's data that already exists. It has already been published or collected and analyzed by someone else, but you need it for your planning purposes. Now, this type of data will often require you to use a specific tool or a specific technique to analyze the data. So for instance, if you're getting this secondary data from Facebook, it will not be the same as what you'll get from Google or LinkedIn or Twitter, because everyone collected it using their own methodology. They have their own tools. So for you to access this secondary data, you will need to understand how this tool works, or even have the capability of analyzing the information they will give you. You also don't control the data collection process because it's not your data. You're getting it from someone else. So there are chances where the data won't be as detailed as you had hoped it would be, or there will be limitations such as duration. Maybe you need data for 5 years and they only have data that lasts 2 years or 6 months, or maybe they'll require you to pay extra to get more information. So there are a lot of limitations when it comes to secondary sources of data. And the most common one that a lot of people complain about, especially in marketing, you get this data and then when you're going through it, it does not seem as reliable, because maybe the information you're being given, you have some questions about it, or it's not really suitable for your market or your country, or even the type of product that you're doing the research for. So it's not as reliable as primary sources of data. So there you have it. Those are the two sources of data. You now have an understanding of what data is and a brief history of how far back data goes. Now in the next video, I will be talking about the different types of data, and obviously I will give examples of each of them so that we are all on the same page. See you.